The day I walked out, they didn't cry. They panicked. Not because they lost me, but because they lost their maid, their bank, their safety net, and they never thought I'd leave. The hum of the ceiling fan above me was the only sound in the room as I scrubbed dried casserole from the sides of the baking dish. Midnight had passed hours ago, but the sink was still full, the trash still overflowing, and the floor sticky from the juice my youngest cousin spilled. 3 hours into the family dinner I hadn't agreed to host. I hadn't eaten yet. The smell of bleach clung to my hands. My back ached. A muscle in my neck throbbed with every scrub, but no one noticed. No one ever did. Upstairs, I could hear them laughing. My mother, my siblings, their voices muffled by the floorboards and layered with comfort I didn't recognize. Their favorite show was on. Someone opened a can of soda. Someone else asked where the remote was. It was like I didn't exist, except when something needed doing. They'd eaten the meal I made, left their plates wherever they landed, and drifted away like satisfied guests at a restaurant, while I, the unpaid staff, worked the closing shift. I reached for the trash bag and tied it tight. Juice sloshed at the bottom. I wrinkled my nose and carried it out the back door, the cold air biting at my skin. The alley was quiet, dark. For a moment, I stood there, trash bag at my feet, apron dusted with flour, socks wet from a spill I hadn't had time to clean, and stared up at the stars. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just empty. Hollowed out by a routine I hadn't questioned in years. Inside, the dishwasher beeped softly, a full load ready to be unloaded. Probably by me. Again. I paused in the doorway, just long enough to hear my brother's voice float down the stairs. "She's like a machine," he laughed. "Seriously, laundry, food, errands, she just does it." My sister's voice chimed in, amused. "Mom says I'm the pretty one, but she's the useful one. Can't lose her or we'd all fall apart." Laughter followed. My mother's too. That soft, syrupy laugh she only used when the attention was on her. The sound wrapped around me like barbed wire. I didn't go back inside right away. I just stood there, apron clinging to me like a second skin, and wondered when I became a background character in my own life, and more importantly, when I stopped noticing. It wasn't always like this. At least that's what I tell myself when the silence gets too loud. I remember being 15 and proud to help, folding laundry while Mom rested her sore back, making dinner when Dad worked late, running errands so my younger siblings could finish homework. It felt like love back then, like contribution, like being a good daughter. "You're so dependable," they'd say. "We don't know what we'd do without you." And I wore those words like armor. Somewhere along the line, that armor turned to chains. What began as support became expectation. I didn't notice when the thank yous stopped. I just kept moving, folding, cooking, cleaning, fixing. I gave my time, my energy, my sleep. And when I finally moved back home after college, after the internship didn't turn into a job and rent proved impossible on my own, it was as if they'd been waiting for me to fall back into place. Only this time, it wasn't framed as help. This time, it was obligation. My room became the overflow storage space. My days, their personal assistant schedule, groceries, I'd get them. Appointments, I'd drive them. My sister's cheer competitions, my brother's dentist visits, my mother's prescriptions. I held it all like spinning plates, terrified of letting even one fall. Because if I did, who else would step in? "You're so lucky you don't have a real job," my sister once said, scrolling through her phone while I scrubbed the bathroom she shared but never cleaned. All this free time. I looked at her manicured hands, at the untouched laundry pile behind her. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Because what could I say? That this didn't feel like luck? that I didn't even know who I was anymore outside of the helper. I began to vanish in that house, slowly, quietly, like sugar dissolving in tea, and no one seemed to notice the parts of me going missing, not even me. The shift started subtly, not with a scream or slammed door, but with a question I hadn't let myself ask in years. What if this isn't normal? It came late one night while I was sorting socks. Yes, socks. Mismatched, overwashed, none of them mine. I was kneeling on the cold tile floor of the laundry room, surrounded by piles that weren't mine to care about, and it hit me. I didn't remember the last time I did my own laundry without someone else's mixed in, or cooked a meal and ate it hot, or took a shower without someone yelling through the door asking where their toothpaste was. The silence that night felt heavier than usual, like it had figured out I was starting to notice it. Over the next few days, things that used to slide past me started sticking. My mom leaving her coffee cup on the counter, then calling from the couch, "Can you wash that real quick?" My brother texting me from upstairs to bring him a snack while I cooked dinner for the third night in a row. My sister posting mirror selfies in clothes I'd hemmed for her while calling herself a self-made queen. It was like the veil had lifted, like I'd been living in a spell that was finally wearing off. I started keeping a little notebook, just jotting things down, not out of spite, not yet, but because I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't lazy, ungrateful, dramatic. Proof that something was wrong. One evening, I wrote down, told Mom I had a migraine. She said, "Okay, but can you finish the dishes first?" Another, offered to help with rent. Ended up covering the whole thing when no one else could swing it. Again. At first, the list embarrassed me, like I was ratting out my own family, like I was being petty. But the longer it got, the clearer it became. This wasn't pettiness. It was evidence, a trail of breadcrumbs leading me out of the forest I'd been stuck in for years. The next time I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, hair pulled back, shirt stained from dinner, eyes sunken with exhaustion, I barely recognized the woman looking back. I whispered to her, "You don't have to live like this." And for the first time, she believed me. Once you start seeing the truth, you can't unsee it. It's like a crack in glass, small at first, almost nothing, but every day it spreads, it splinters, it distorts everything you look through. I started taking inventory, not of furniture or clothes, but of my life. What I did, what they didn't, what I gave, what they expected. I opened a spreadsheet on my old laptop and titled it Contributions. The name felt sterile, cold, but necessary. I typed in every rent payment I'd covered just this once, every birthday I planned for them down to the decorations, every tank of gas, every grocery run, every forgotten favor. I even included things I never would have counted before: missed outings, declined dates, skipped interviews because someone needed a ride to a dental appointment or forgot their presentation at home. It added up faster than I was ready for. By the end of the week, I was staring at a 4-digit number. Not in hours, in dollars. And that wasn't even half the story. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about time, energy, opportunity. All the ways I'd bent myself to fit a mold they never asked me if I wanted to wear. Just handed to me with a smile and said, "Thanks, sweetheart. You're such a lifesaver." The word stuck in my throat now. Lifesaver. No one asked who was saving me. I started observing them the way you watch strangers, detached, clinical, almost amused. My brother, posting gym selfies while I folded his laundry. My sister complaining about being so busy while scrolling TikTok on the couch. My mother bragging on the phone to a friend about how well she raised her kids, while I loaded groceries into the car behind her. And through it all, I smiled. I nodded. I played the role, but inside, I was building something, a plan, quiet as breath, sharp as a blade. They had no idea I was getting ready to take back what was mine. The first thing I reclaimed was my time, Not all at once, not in a grand, dramatic scene, but quietly, one no at a time. When my sister burst into the kitchen asking if I could drive her to the salon because she couldn't risk being late, I said, "I'm busy," without offering an explanation. Her eyes blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. She waited for the excuse, the apology, the last-minute offer to squeeze it in. But I turned back to the stove and kept stirring. She left in a huff. I didn't flinch. The next day, my mom handed me a list of errands without asking if I had time. I glanced at it and slid it back across the table. "I won't be able to get to these," I said evenly. She stared at me, lips parting, then closing. I walked away before she could respond. My heart pounded for 20 minutes afterward, but I didn't go back. That week, I bought a lock for my bedroom door, not because I had anything to hide, but because I finally understood that my space was not sacred to them. My brother had walked in countless times without knocking, borrowing chargers, shirts, even my work laptop once without asking. I installed the lock while he was out, didn't mention it, just twisted it shut behind me the next time I entered and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. I stopped folding laundry that wasn't mine. If it was left in the dryer, I tossed it into the communal basket. I didn't sort. I didn't fold. I didn't apologize. I began buying my own groceries, labeling them, cooking only for myself. I ate alone in my room with the door locked and my headphones in. They complained at first, said I was being selfish, distant, cold. And maybe I was. But after years of being warm and helpful and dependable, I didn't mind the chill. I didn't tell them I was saving money, that I'd opened a new bank account in my name only, that I'd updated my resume and started interviewing for jobs in another city. I just smiled and kept my head down, because revolutions don't always start with fire. Sometimes they begin with silence. I always thought if I snapped, it would be loud, maybe something cinematic, a scream, a thrown plate, a dramatic exit with a suitcase and tears. But the truth is, breaking isn't always theatrical. Sometimes it sounds like silence. It feels like numbness. It looks like going through the motions with a face that doesn't crack anymore. The moment it happened, I didn't even realize it was the moment. It was a Saturday morning, cloudy and still. I'd woken early, not by alarm but by force of habit. I padded to the kitchen, expecting silence. Instead, I found my mother at the table sipping coffee. She looked up like she'd been waiting for me. "The upstairs bathroom is a mess," she said, tone casual but pointed. "Can you get to it before your sister's friend comes over?" I blinked. My hands were still warm from sleep. I hadn't even spoken yet. "I'll be heading out in a bit," I said, brushing past her toward the fridge. "You've been out a lot lately," she replied. "I'm just saying, don't forget this is your home too. We all pitch in." We all pitch in. The sentence echoed inside me like a cruel joke. I thought of the list, the spreadsheet if we're being honest, of chores, bills, sacrifices, cancellations, favors. We all pitch in felt like a slap. But I didn't yell. I didn't even look at her. I just opened the fridge, grabbed my yogurt, and walked away. The next day, I got a group text. "Family dinner, 7 p.m. My sister added, "Don't forget the dessert." No please, no ask. Just an order dressed as expectation. I didn't respond. I didn't go. That evening, while the smell of garlic and roasted meat drifted upstairs, I lay on my bed, rereading the offer letter from the firm in Seattle. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't six figures. But it was mine. And it came with health benefits, a relocation stipend, and an apartment recommendation that included one crucial line: utilities included, no roommates. I'd already put in my notice at the bookstore, quietly, no fanfare, just a printed letter and a thank you. My manager didn't ask questions, just hugged me and whispered, "About time." I packed slowly, over a week, one drawer at a time. Things they wouldn't notice were missing. until they did. The baking pans I bought, the medicine cabinet items I paid for, my own linens, my own towels, my chargers, my mugs. Small things, but mine. Every box I filled felt like reclaiming a part of myself. They barely noticed, or pretended not to. Maybe they thought it was just spring cleaning. Maybe they didn't care. Or maybe they were too used to things disappearing around them while they stayed exactly the same. But inside me, something had changed. I no longer felt trapped. I felt ready. The night before I left, my mother knocked on my door for the first time in months. I was taping up a box labeled Kitchen Mine when I heard the soft tap. "Are you free to do a grocery run tomorrow?" she asked. I looked up at her, standing in the doorway like she hadn't seen the luggage, the sealed boxes, the bare shelves. Maybe she had. Maybe she just didn't want to believe them. "No," I said. Her brows drew together. "Are you working?" "No," I said again, and then added, "I won't be here." She stared at me. For a moment, it was like she didn't understand the words. I didn't explain. I didn't comfort. I didn't soften the edges. She turned without another word. I heard her footsteps disappear down the hallway, quiet, confused, and I returned to sealing the box. Because sometimes the moment you break is also the moment you begin. The morning I left, the house was still asleep, or pretending to be. I moved quietly, but not sneakily. I wasn't hiding. I wanted the sound of the front door closing to be the last thing they heard from me, final, unambiguous. The air was thick with the scent of old habits, coffee grounds already laid out, laundry basket halfway down the stairs, a list scrawled in my mother's handwriting waiting on the kitchen counter. Groceries, car wash, pick up dry cleaning. My name wasn't on it, but we both knew who it was for. I left it there. I didn't write a note. I didn't owe them one. I loaded my bags into the back seat of my car, the car I paid for, gassed up, maintained. The one they borrowed more times than they asked. The trunk clicked shut with a sense of ceremony I didn't expect. A simple sound, but it echoed like closure. I took one last look at the house, not with sentiment, not even nostalgia, just acknowledgement. A place I had once called home, though it never treated me like someone who belonged. As I pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed. "Mom, can you grab paper towels on your way back?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. 2 states away, in a cheap hotel room with a scratchy comforter and a view of a parking lot, I exhaled in a way I hadn't in years. Not a sigh, a release, like something had finally unclenched inside me. That night, I ordered takeout and watched a movie with the sound too loud and the lights off, just because I could. No one asking for help with the Wi-Fi. No one opening the door mid-scene. No voice from the hallway calling my name because someone forgot their login or burned their toast or misplaced a charger. It was quiet. And in that quiet, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. But freedom comes at a cost. And mine came due 3 days later, in the form of a missed call list that grew by the hour. First my mother, then my sister, then my brother. A cascade of voicemails, each one angrier than the last. Where was I? Why wasn't I answering? What about the bills? What about the house? What about them? Not once. "Are you okay?" Not once. "Do you need anything?" I listened to each message once, then deleted it. Their voices sounded smaller from a distance, less commanding, less sacred. I didn't block them, not yet. I wanted them to feel what they'd never allowed me, the ache of absence, the inconvenience of someone they expected and counted on, choosing not to show up. The final message came from my sister. "You've made your point. But don't forget who was there when you had nothing." I laughed, out loud, sharp and bitter. They were never there when I had nothing. They just used me to keep from having less. And now, They were going to have to learn how to live without me. They showed up a week later, uninvited, unannounced. I heard the knock before I saw the car, my brother's, parked just crooked enough to block the driveway. When I looked through the peephole, I saw all three of them on the other side of the door. My mother with her lips tight and her purse clutched like a prop. My sister with her arms folded and sunglasses still on, and my brother, pacing like a caged animal. I didn't open the door. Not right away. I made them wait. When I finally did, the expression shifted instantly. Surprise at first. I imagined they thought I wouldn't answer at all. And then that manufactured warmth my mother always wore like perfume, sweet and suffocating. "There you are," she said, voice pitched high like this was just a social visit. We were in the neighborhood. I said nothing, just held the door, frame straight, eyes steady. "We just wanted to talk," my sister added. "You kind of disappeared." "I left," I said, voice flat. Not disappeared. Left. The air changed. My brother stepped forward. "You didn't even tell us. You didn't give us a chance to—" "To what?" I cut in, the first crack of sharpness in my voice. "Guilt me into staying? Make me feel bad for wanting my own life?" No one spoke. I let the silence stretch. I was no longer afraid of it. "I wasn't your daughter," I continued. "I was your housekeeper, your chauffeur, your errand girl. You didn't love me. You used me." "That's not true," my mother snapped, but the conviction in her voice had holes in it. I stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in." Their surprise was visible. My mother hesitated, then entered. My sister followed, then my brother. They looked around like tourists, like they were entering the home of someone they didn't quite recognize, because they were. I motioned for them to sit, but remained standing. My laptop was open on the counter, a tab already waiting. I clicked play, and there it was, my voice recorded weeks earlier, reading off the list. Not in anger, not in vengeance, just in facts. The rent payments, the groceries, the car maintenance, the unpaid bills, the emotional labor, the errands, the cancellations, the birthdays I planned, the holidays I hosted, the time, the money, the years. "I kept receipts," I said simply, "in case you ever tried to rewrite the story." My sister's face had gone pale. My brother looked like he wanted to get up, but didn't know how. My mother's jaw clenched, like she was chewing on the apology she couldn't spit out. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "Not money, not help, not even an apology." "Then what do you want?" my mother asked, her voice brittle. "Distance," I said, "and respect, and space, and for once, for all of you to understand, I'm not coming back." My sister blinked. "Ever?" I shrugged. "That depends on you." They left soon after, quietly, no shouting, no door slamming, no last-ditch effort to spin the narrative, just three people who, for the first time, didn't get what they came for. And me? I closed the door and exhaled. The house was quiet again, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. It didn't happen all at once. The healing, I mean. There wasn't a single day I woke up and thought, "I'm free now." It came in waves, in small, almost invisible shifts that slowly rewired my body and mind. It came in the silence of a Sunday morning when no one called me asking for favors. In the soft sound of eggs frying in a pan I didn't have to clean up after someone else. In the sharp joy of a paycheck that didn't disappear into someone else's overdue bill. The first weekend after the confrontation, I slept in until noon. I didn't hear anyone knocking, no footsteps outside my door, no voices asking where the charger was or what was for breakfast. Just sunlight, spilling across my sheets like a promise. I bought flowers that day, not because it was a holiday or someone's birthday, just because I could. I put them in a chipped glass jar on the kitchen table and watched how the yellow petals caught the light. My apartment wasn't fancy, just a modest one-bedroom with squeaky floors and a stubborn faucet, but every inch of it was mine. The dishes in the sink were mine. The mess, mine. the quiet mine. There was no one to clean up after but myself, no one to cook for, answer to, or be available for on command. I started keeping a list, not like the one I made before. That one tracked what was taken. This one, it tracked what I kept, what I protected, what I built. I titled it simply, Mine. One entry, came home after work and took a nap. No guilt. Another, left my phone on Do Not Disturb for 2 full days. No one to answer to. And another, booked a solo weekend trip to the mountains. No one asked me to cancel, no emergencies, just peace. The list grew slowly, but steadily, like roots threading through soil. I started volunteering at a local nonprofit on Tuesday evenings, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time for, which really meant I'd never had permission to prioritize anything that didn't serve someone else. I even reconnected with a college friend I'd lost touch with, the kind of friend who listened without waiting to speak, who remembered my birthday without needing a calendar reminder. She came over one night with wine and takeout, and we sat on my floor laughing about nothing in particular, the kind of laughter that fills up all the lonely spaces and makes them feel like home. The next morning, I opened my phone to see 20 missed calls. My mother, my sister, my brother, and then silence again. No apology, no real explanation, just the digital echo of people who had only ever known how to reach for me when they needed something. Now that I'd taken myself off the menu, they didn't know what to do. And I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. Because every day I woke up without them pulling at me was a day I was a little more mine. I didn't just take back my time, my money, or my space. I took back myself. For years, I thought love looked like sacrifice, that if I gave enough, carried enough, bent enough, it would mean something, that it would make me matter. But now I know, love that demands you disappear isn't love at all. It's control wrapped in guilt, and I'm done calling it anything softer. I live differently now, not louder, not flashier, just freer. There are still days when the silence feels strange, when the urge to explain myself creeps back in, but I don't answer it. I remind myself I don't owe anyone my peace. They still try, now and then. A message, a memory, a small plea, dressed in nostalgia. But I've learned the difference between missing someone and missing who you thought they were. And I don't confuse the two anymore. I look around my little life, the one I built brick by brick, boundary by boundary, and I feel proud. Not because it's perfect, but because it's mine. And that's what they never expected. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I didn't fight dirty. I just walked away, and I didn't look back.